Is there any mechanic here? Anyone at all? Mike's voice cut through the hot afternoon like a whip. The bonnet of his expensive black SUV was wide open. Steam hissed out in thin, angry lines. The engine coughed again, then went quiet, like it had given up. Mike stood in the middle of the tarred road, sweat shining on his forehead. His white suit, the kind people only wore to big meetings, now looked creased and dusty. His tie was loose, his jaw was tight. His convoy cars were behind him, but they couldn't move. The village road was narrow, people were already staring. A few women with baskets on their heads slowed down to watch. Mike hated being watched, especially like this. He was a billionaire CEO, a man who never begged anyone for help. Yet there he was, shouting for a mechanic. His driver had tried to call someone from the nearest town, but the network kept failing. Mike's phone showed one bar, then none, then one again, like it was playing with him. "Sir," one of his aides said softly, "maybe we should wait. Someone will come." Mike turned sharply. Wait? In this heat? With an engine that might blow up? No. He stepped away from the SUV and looked around the roadside, angry eyes scanning the small community. Modest houses with old red zinc roofs sat in the distance. Dust floated in the air. A mango tree stood on the side of the road, big and shady, its leaves barely moving. Under that mango tree, a man lay on the dusty ground. At first, Mike thought he was dead. The man's coat was brown and tattered, stained with mud. His hair was overgrown, wild and dusty. His beard was thick and tangled. His slippers looked like they had been worn for years without rest. He was sleeping like someone who had no strength left to sit up. Mike felt a small sting in his chest, then he pushed it away. Not my problem, he told himself, but the villagers were still watching. And Mike's SUV was still broken. Mike took a step toward the tree and shouted again, louder. "Is there any mechanic around here? Anyone who can fix a car?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the homeless man moved. Slowly, like his bones were heavy stones. He raised his head just a little, blinking as if the sunlight was too bright. His eyes were tired, but they were not empty. They were sharp, like someone who used to think deeply. He looked toward Mike's SUV, then toward Mike, and with a voice that shocked everyone, he said, "I can fix it." The road went silent. Even the birds seemed to pause. Mike froze. "You?" The man sat up halfway, using his elbow to support himself. Dust covered his clothes. His hands looked rough but strong. "Yes," the man repeated, calm and steady. "I can fix it." Mike's aide laughed nervously, like he had heard a joke that was not funny. "Sir, he's just a homeless man." Mike stared at the man under the mango tree, feeling his frustration boil. He did not have time for games. "Do you even know what's wrong with it?" Mike snapped. The homeless man didn't get angry. He didn't beg. He didn't even smile. He just looked at the bonnet of the SUV and said, like he had done it 1,000 times, "It's not the engine itself. It's the fuel pressure line. It's choking. That's why it coughed and died." Mike's throat went dry. That was too specific, too correct. Mike's driver blinked in surprise. How do you know that?" The homeless man swallowed hard, like the words were painful to bring out. "I used to be a respected automobile engineer," he said, "before life broke me." The villagers murmured. Mike didn't like the way his heart reacted to those words. A respected engineer. This man. He looked like a shadow, like a man the world had thrown away. Yet his eyes didn't match his clothes. Mike walked closer, still cautious. "What's your name?" The homeless man hesitated. His face tightened, like he was deciding whether telling the truth was safe. "Mark," he said finally. "My name is Mark." Mike's chest rose and fell. Mark. He looked away for a second, breathing through his anger. He had a choice. Keep standing here, helpless, while people watched and his SUV steamed like a kettle. Take a risk and let the homeless man try. Mike hated risks he couldn't control, but he hated helplessness more. "Fine," Mike said sharply. "Try." His aide stepped forward quickly. "Sir, are you sure?" Mike raised a hand. "If he tries anything stupid, stop him." Mark nodded once, like he understood the warning. He stood up slowly. His body looked thin under the coat, but his movements had a strange confidence. Like his hands remembered something his life had forgotten. He walked to the SUV and leaned over the open bonnet. Mike watched closely. Mark didn't touch random things. He didn't poke around like someone guessing. He listened. He leaned in and placed his fingers carefully on a hose. Then he tapped a part, gently. Then he turned his head, like he was hearing a hidden sound inside the machine. Mike's driver whispered, almost to himself, "This man, he's not pretending." Mark removed his coat. Under it, his shirt was old and faded, but his arms showed old strength, not gym strength, work strength, the kind you get from building and fixing things with your hands. Mark pulled something from his pocket. A small piece of wire. Mike almost laughed. Wire? But before anyone could speak, Mark bent down and used the wire to fasten something in place. Then he reached toward the fuel line, pressed it, and tightened a clamp. His fingers moved fast and sure. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. Mark wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Start it," he told the driver. The driver looked at Mike for permission. Mike nodded once, his heart beating harder than he wanted. The driver turned the key. The SUV coughed. For one terrifying second, it sounded worse. Mike's stomach dropped. Then, the engine roared to life. Smooth, steady, powerful, no steam, no shaking, just a clean, confident sound. The villagers gasped. Mike's aide stepped back like he had seen a ghost. Mike himself stood still, staring at the SUV like it had just performed a miracle. Then he turned slowly to look at Mark. Mark was breathing hard. His face looked tired, but there was a small, quiet pride in his eyes, like someone had just remembered who he truly was. Mike's voice came out low. "Who are you?" Mark looked down at his hands, then up again. "I told you," he said softly. "I'm Mark." Mike stepped closer, almost without thinking. His eyes fell on Mark's right hand. There, near the wrist, partly hidden by dirt and small scars, was a birthmark, a very clear mark. A shape Mike had seen in the mirror his whole life. A mark Mike himself had. Mike's breath caught. His world tilted for a second. Because it wasn't just similar, it was the same shape, the same place, the same mark. Mike's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His heart hammered like it was trying to break free. Mark noticed Mike staring. He pulled his hand back slightly, confused. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Mike swallowed, his throat suddenly tight. He forced the words out, slow and careful, like he was afraid the truth might explode if he said it too fast. "Have you ever been told you have a twin brother?" Mark's face changed, like someone had slapped him with a memory. His eyes widened, his lips parted, then his shoulders began to shake. "No," Mark whispered, and before anyone could understand what was happening, tears began to fall down Mark's dusty cheeks. "Yes," Mark corrected himself, voice breaking. "Yes, I was told." Mike's knees almost went weak. Mark's crying became heavier, like he had been holding it inside for too long. "When I was 5, Mark said, wiping his face with trembling fingers, "my parents told me my twin brother was taken away." Mike's breath stopped. Mark looked up at him, tears shining in his eyes. "And they said—" Mark's voice dropped to a whisper, like the name was sacred. "They said his name was Mike." Mike felt like the road disappeared under him. His aide called softly, "Sir?" But Mike didn't hear him. Mike stared at Mark, his mind racing, his heart screaming. Because Mike had come to this village for one reason: to find the truth about where he came from. He had found old documents after the death of the rich couple who raised him. Documents that hinted he was taken from this exact village 30 years ago. He had come here angry, confused, and desperate. But he did not come here expecting this. Mike's hands trembled. Slowly he raised his sleeve. He revealed his own wrist. And there it was. The same birthmark. Mark's eyes locked on it. Mark stopped breathing. Mike's voice cracked. "My name is Mike," he said, "and I'm 35. Mark's mouth shook. "I'm 35 too," Mark whispered. The villagers began to whisper loudly now, shock spreading like fire. Mike took one step forward, then another. His eyes filled with heat he had never allowed himself to show in public. Mark's knees bent like he might fall, and Mike, billionaire CEO, proud, guarded, untouchable, reached out and grabbed Mark tightly. He pulled him into a hug. Mark froze for half a second, then clung to him like a child. Mike didn't care about the mud, didn't care about the tattered clothes, didn't care that people were watching. He held Mark like he was holding a missing piece of himself. Then, through tears he fought hard to control, Mike whispered the next question, the one that would change everything. "If you know my name, then you must know your parents' names too." Mark pulled back slightly, eyes red, voice shaking. "Our father," Mark said, "was Johnson. And our mother," he swallowed hard, "was Agnes." Mike's face went pale, because those were the exact names written in the old documents he found. His breath came out in a broken sound, and right there, under the mango tree, with the whole village watching, Mike realized something terrifying. This was not just a reunion. This was proof of a crime, a kidnapping, a stolen life, and if someone had taken him away, that person might still be watching. Mike tightened his grip on Mark's shoulder, voice low, urgent. "Mark," he said, "tell me everything you remember about the day I was taken." Mark's eyes widened again, and before he could answer, a black motorcycle rolled up beside the convoy. The rider didn't remove his helmet. He didn't greet anyone. He just stopped and stared straight at Mark. Then he spoke in a cold, flat voice that made Mike's blood run cold. "So, you finally found each other. So, you finally found each other." The words fell heavy on the dusty road. Mike's grip tightened around Mark's shoulder. His body moved without thinking, placing himself slightly in front of Mark, protective, alert. "Who are you?" Mike demanded. The man on the motorcycle did not answer immediately. He slowly removed his helmet. He was dark-skinned, lean, with sharp eyes that looked like they missed nothing. A thin scar ran across his left cheek. He smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Relax," the man said calmly. "I'm not here to fight." Mark's heart pounded. His legs felt weak. "Then why did you say that?" Mark asked. "What do you mean by finally?" The man glanced at the villagers, who had gathered closer now, their faces full of shock and curiosity. "Not here," he said. "Too many ears." Mike stepped forward. "You don't get to choose where we talk." The man looked at Mike's white suit, his expensive watch, the SUV behind him. Then he looked at Mark's torn clothes. His smile faded. "You look just like him," the man said quietly, pointing at Mike. "Even after all these years." Mike's chest burned. "You knew my parents?" The man hesitated. Then he shook his head. "I knew what happened to you." Mark felt a cold fear crawl up his spine. "What happened?" Mark asked softly. The man took a slow breath. "Your brother was taken from this village. Not lost, not adopted. Taken." Mike's fists clenched. "I already know that," Mike said. "I came here because I found documents after my parents—" He paused, pain flickering in his eyes. "After the people who raised me died. The papers said I was taken from this village." The man nodded. "Yes, taken by someone who wanted money and power." The villagers gasped. Mark felt dizzy. "Who?" The man looked at Mark for a long moment, then his eyes dropped to the ground. "That story," he said, "is dangerous." Mike stepped closer, voice hard. "Everything about my life is dangerous right now. Speak." The man sighed. "Your real parents, Johnson and Agnes," he said, "were good people, simple people, but they knew something they shouldn't have known." Mark's breath caught. What did they know? The man opened his mouth. Then suddenly a loud phone rang. Mike's phone. The sound broke the tension like glass. Mike glanced at the screen. His face changed. "It's my head of security," he said. He answered quickly. "Yes?" The voice on the other end was urgent. "Sir, we traced the registration of the motorcycle that just entered your location. That man, he is wanted for questioning in an old child trafficking case." Mike's eyes shot to the man in front of him. The man saw the change in Mike's face. And he smiled again. "You see," the man said softly, "dangerous." Before anyone could react, the man jumped back onto his motorcycle. "Wait," Mark cried, "you can't just leave." The engine roared, dust flew into the air. The man turned his head slightly and shouted over the noise, "If you want the truth, billionaire, don't look at the living." Then he sped off down the road. Mike's aide ran forward. "Sir, should we chase him?" Mike shook his head slowly, eyes fixed on the disappearing motorcycle. "No," he said, "let him run." Mark grabbed Mike's arm, panic rising. "He knows something. We can't let him disappear." Mike turned to him, his voice calmer than Mark expected. "He already gave us enough," Mike said. "He confirmed this was not an accident, and now I know something else." "What?" Mark asked. Mike looked at him, eyes burning with determination. "Someone planned my life. Someone planned yours." The villagers murmured nervously. Some stepped back, suddenly afraid to be involved. Mike turned to his aides. "Prepare the car." Then he looked at Mark. "Get in," Mike said. Mark hesitated, staring at the SUV. "Where are we going?" Mike answered without hesitation. "The hospital." Mark's heart skipped. "Why?" Mike held up his wrist again, showing the birthmark. "Because feelings are not proof," he said. "And I need proof before we face whoever did this to us." The hospital smelled of disinfectant and quiet fear. Mark had never been inside a place like this before, not clean, not calm. His slippers made soft sounds on the shiny floor as he followed Mike. Nurses stared, doctors whispered. People recognized Mike instantly. Phones came out. Murmurs filled the air, but Mike did not care. He filled the forms himself. "DNA test," he told the doctor firmly. "Immediately." The doctor nodded, nervous. "Yes, sir." Mark sat down slowly, his hands shaking. "What if—" Mark began, then stopped. Mike sat beside him. For the first time, his voice softened. "What if what?" "What if this is a mistake?" Mark asked. "What if we are not brothers?" Mike looked straight ahead. "Then I still won't leave you like this." Mark turned to him, eyes wet. "Why?" Mike answered honestly. "Because even before the birthmark, I saw myself in you, not your clothes, not your situation, your eyes." Mark swallowed hard. The nurse came in. Blood samples were taken. "Results will take some hours," the doctor said. Mike nodded. "We will wait." The hours felt like years. Mark sat quietly, memories flooding his mind, his parents crying at night, the stories they stopped telling halfway, the way they always stared at the road like they were waiting for someone. Mike paced the hallway. His mind raced. Johnson, Agnes. The names felt heavy now, real, human, not just ink on paper. His phone buzzed again. "Yes," Mike answered. "We searched old records," his head of security said. "There was a powerful businessman involved in child trafficking 30 years ago. The case disappeared. The name was buried." Mike stopped walking. "What was the name?" There was a pause. Then the voice said carefully, "Sir, the man's surname matches the surname of the couple who raised you." Mike's world tilted. His knees felt weak. "You mean?" Mike whispered. "Yes, sir," the voice confirmed. "Your adopted family may have been involved." Mike ended the call slowly. He looked at Mark, who was sitting quietly, unaware of the storm approaching. Mike's hands shook. If this was true, then the people he loved were the people who destroyed his family. At that moment, the doctor walked out of the lab, holding a file. His face was serious. Mike and Mark stood at the same time. The doctor looked at both of them and said, "The results are ready." Mark held his breath. Mike stepped forward. The doctor opened the file, and before he could speak, a loud crash echoed from inside the hospital. Shouting followed. Security guards ran past. Someone screamed. Mike turned sharply toward the noise, and a nurse shouted from the corridor, "Sir, someone is trying to steal the DNA samples." Mike's eyes widened. Mark's heart dropped. Because now they knew one thing for sure: someone was desperate to stop the truth from coming out. "Someone is trying to steal the DNA samples." The shout tore through the hospital hallway. Mike reacted first. "Lock the floor," he commanded, his voice sharp and clear. "Now." His head of security moved fast, blocking exits. Nurses rushed patients into rooms. A guard slammed a door shut at the end of the corridor. Mark stood frozen. "Why would anyone steal our test?" his mind screamed. Mike grabbed Mark's wrist. "Stay with me, don't move." Heavy footsteps echoed. A man in a hospital coat ran past, pushing a trolley too fast to look normal. His cap was pulled low. His eyes darted left and right. "That's him," a nurse shouted. The man saw Mike and panicked. He shoved the trolley aside and ran. Mike sprinted after him. His white suit flashed as he moved, fast and angry. Mark followed, heart pounding, slippers slapping against the floor. "Stop!" Mike shouted. The man burst through a stairwell door. They chased him down the stairs. The sound of shoes and boots thundered. At the ground floor, the man tried to slip into the crowd, but Mike was faster. He grabbed the man's arm and slammed him against the wall. The man cried out. The cap fell off. Mark gasped. "I know him," Mark whispered. Mike turned. "You do?" Mark nodded, eyes wide. "He used to come to the village when I was small. He brought food sometimes. He asked questions about families." The man struggled, sweating. "Let me go." Mike pressed him harder. "Who sent you?" "I won't tell you anything," the man snapped. Mike leaned closer, voice cold. "You already told me enough by trying to steal the truth." Security arrived and handcuffed the man. As they dragged him away, he shouted one last thing that made Mark's blood turn cold. "You don't know how deep this goes. You should have stayed lost." Silence followed. Mike breathed slowly, steadying himself. Then he turned back toward the lab. "Doctor," Mike said firmly, "is the sample safe?" The doctor nodded, shaken. "Yes, he only got copies. The original samples are locked." Mike's shoulders dropped a little. Mark wiped sweat from his face. "Why would anyone want to stop this?" Mike looked at him. "Because the truth threatens someone powerful." They returned to the lab. The doctor opened the file again. "This result is clear," the doctor said. "There is no doubt." Mark's hands shook. "Please, just say it." The doctor looked at both of them. "You are identical twins." The words landed softly, but hit hard. Mark's knees gave way. Mike caught him. Tears poured down Mark's face. "It's true," he cried. "I'm not alone." Mike's eyes burned. He pulled Mark into a tight hug, holding him like he was afraid the world might steal him again. "My brother," Mike whispered. "I found you." For a moment, nothing else mattered. Then reality returned. Mike stepped back, wiping his face. "Doctor, can we get certified copies?" "Yes, sir," the doctor said quickly. "Everything will be documented." Mike nodded. "Good." An hour later, Mike stood in a quiet room with the handcuffed man, the one who tried to steal the samples. Two guards stood by the door. Mike placed the DNA report on the table. "Look at it," Mike said. The man stared, jaw tight. "Your silence won't protect you," Mike continued. "Tell me who sent you." The man laughed bitterly. "You think the truth sets people free? It destroys them." Mike leaned forward. "Tell me." The man's shoulders slumped. 35 years ago, he began, your parents, Johnson and Agnes, worked on a small land deal. They found papers proving a rich man was stealing village land using fake names. Mark listened from the corner, heart aching. They planned to report it, the man continued, but someone heard. Mike's voice was low. "Who?" The man swallowed. "The businessman was powerful. He paid men to silence them." Mark gasped. "Our parents—" "They were threatened," the man said. "They refused to stay quiet. So the man ordered that one child be taken, to break them." Mike's fists clenched. "Me?" "Yes," the man said. "You were taken and given to a rich couple who could never have children." Mark's voice shook. "And our parents?" The man looked away. "They were warned again. Later. They died. People said it was sickness, but everyone knew." The room felt cold. Mike's heart pounded. "The couple who raised me, were they part of it?" The man hesitated, then nodded slowly. "They paid for you. They told themselves they were saving you." Mike closed his eyes. Everything he believed about his life cracked open. "Who is the businessman?" Mike asked. The man shook his head fast. "If I say his name, I'm dead." Mike stood up. "You already are, if you keep lying." The man's lips trembled. "He still controls many things. Police, land offices, even hospitals." Mark stepped forward. "Is he in Lagos?" The man nodded once. Mike's eyes hardened. "Then we're going to Lagos," Mike said. That night, Mike and Mark sat in the SUV as it rolled toward the city. Mark stared out the window. "I don't know how to live like this," he said quietly. "One minute I was alone. Now I have a brother. And enemies." Mike placed a hand on his shoulder. "You won't face it alone again." Mark turned to him. "What if they come after me?" "They will," Mike said honestly. "That's why you'll stay with me." Mark hesitated. "I don't belong in your world." Mike smiled softly. "You belong with me. That's enough." Mark swallowed. "Thank you." The SUV entered Lagos. Lights filled the night. Mike's phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. "Stop digging or you will lose him." Mike's jaw tightened. Another message followed, this one with a photo. Mark sleeping earlier in the hospital chair. Taken without their knowledge. Mike's blood went cold. He showed Mark. Mark's face drained. "They're watching us." "Yes," Mike said quietly. "And now they've crossed a line." He looked ahead, determination burning in his eyes. "Get ready, brother," Mike said, "because whoever stole our lives is about to face us." The SUV disappeared into the Lagos night, and somewhere in the darkness a powerful man picked up a phone and said, "Bring me the poor one." Those words echoed in the dark office of a man who never liked to be named. Across Lagos, Mike's SUV glided into the compound of his Ikoyi home. Tall gates closed behind them with a heavy metal sound that made Mark's heart jump. Mark looked around slowly. Clean marble floors, bright lights, security men everywhere. This world felt unreal to him. Mike stepped out first, scanning the area like a soldier. "You're safe here," he said. "No one enters without my approval." Mark nodded, but his chest felt tight. The photo they received, him sleeping, kept replaying in his mind. "They were inside the hospital," Mark said. "That means they can reach anywhere." Mike didn't deny it. "Yes, which is why we must think before we move." Inside the house, Mike led Mark to a guest room. "You rest here," Mike said. "Tomorrow I'll arrange clothes, food, everything." Mark sat on the edge of the bed, his voice low. "Mike, what if I'm the reason you're in danger?" Mike turned back sharply. "Don't ever say that." Mark looked up. "I've survived all these years with nothing. You've built everything. If anything happens to you because of me—" Mike walked back and sat beside him. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I lost 30 years of my life. I will not lose you again because of fear." Mark's eyes burned. "I don't want to be hidden." "You won't be," Mike replied, "but we move smart." The next morning, Mike received a call. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Mike," a smooth voice said, "I hear you found something precious." Mike's spine stiffened. "Who is this?" A soft chuckle. "A friend. One who wants peace." Mike said nothing. The voice continued, "You are a smart man. You know digging into the past can destroy the future." Mike's jaw tightened. "Say what you want." "I want a meeting," the man said. "Tonight. Come alone." Mike laughed coldly. "You already broke into a hospital. You threatened me, and you want trust." "Bring your brother," the man added calmly, "or I will come for him myself." The call ended. Mike stood still. Phone pressed to his ear, breathing slow. Mark, standing by the door, had heard enough. "No," Mark said immediately. "You can't go." Mike looked at him. "They won't stop." Mark stepped forward. "Then let me go alone." Mike's eyes widened. "Absolutely not." Mark's voice shook, but he stood his ground. "Mike, my whole life I've been running. If I keep hiding, they'll keep hunting. Let me face it." Mike grabbed his shoulders. "You don't know these people." "I know hunger," Mark said quietly. "I know fear. I know pain. I've lived it." Silence fell between them. Mike turned away, struggling. After a long moment, he said, "We go together." Mark exhaled. "But on my terms," Mike added. "Security will be near, hidden." Mark nodded. "Okay." The meeting. The place was an old private club on Victoria Island. Quiet, exclusive, guarded. The man waited in a dark corner, sipping a drink. He stood when Mike and Mark approached. He was tall, older, dressed simply, but power sat on him like a shadow. "Mark," the man said, smiling, "you look just like your father." Mark froze. Mike stepped forward. "You will not speak to him like you know him." The man raised his hands calmly. Relax, I admire family. That's why I'm offering a solution. What solution? Mike asked. The man leaned in. Money, protection, silence. Mark's stomach turned. You want us to forget our parents? Mark asked. The man shrugged. The dead cannot complain. Mike slammed his hand on the table. You ordered my parents' lives destroyed. The man's eyes hardened. They chose their fate. Mark felt something break inside him. You took my brother, Mark said, his voice shaking. You took 30 years from us. The man sighed. I gave him a better life. Mike laughed bitterly. You stole him. The man's tone changed. Careful, Mike. Everything you have, your company, your name, can disappear. Mark stood up. Touch him and you'll answer to the world. The man smiled slowly. The world listens to me. He leaned closer to Mark. You, on the other hand, are easy to erase. Mike moved instantly, stepping between them. That's enough, Mike said. We are done here. The man sat back. Think carefully. By tomorrow, choose peace or war. Mike grabbed Mark's arm. We're leaving. As they turned, the man said one last thing. Mark, your parents begged for you. Mark stopped breathing. Mike pulled him away quickly. They stepped outside. The night air felt heavy. Mike's phone buzzed. No signal. A car engine roared. Headlights flashed. Suddenly, men appeared from the shadows. Move, Mike shouted. Security rushed in, guns raised. Chaos exploded. A loud bang. People screamed. Mark felt hands grab him from behind. No, Mike shouted. Mark was dragged backward, struggling. Mike, Mark cried. Mike fought toward him, punching one man down. Another grabbed Mark's arm. Mark slipped, fell. Someone pulled a hood over his head. Mike heard Mark's voice fading. Don't let them. Then silence. The engines roared away. Mike stood frozen, breathing hard, surrounded by security. Mark was gone. Mike's eyes burned with fury and fear. He clenched his fists and whispered through his teeth, I will burn your empire to the ground. And somewhere in the darkness, Mark was driven away, toward a place where the past waited to be buried forever. Darkness pressed against Mark's face. The hood smelled of fuel and old cloth. The road hummed beneath the tires as the vehicle sped through Lagos. His hands were tied, but his mind stayed awake. Don't panic, he told himself. He remembered the look in Mike's eyes when he was taken. That look was not fear. It was fire. The car slowed. A gate creaked open. Then silence. Mark was dragged out and pushed into a room. The hood came off. He blinked. An old warehouse. Broken windows. One dim bulb. The powerful man from the club stepped forward, calm and cold. You should have stayed quiet, the man said. Now your brother will learn what loss feels like. Mark lifted his chin. He already knows. You taught him. The man's face hardened. You think he can touch me? Before Mark could answer, the sound of engines exploded outside. Gunshots cracked the night. Shouts followed. The warehouse door burst open. Mark, Mike's voice thundered. In seconds, Mike's security team flooded the room. The powerful man turned to run, but stopped when armed officers blocked the exit. Police lights flashed through the broken windows. Mike rushed to Mark and cut the ropes with shaking hands. Are you hurt? Mike asked. Mark shook his head, tears filling his eyes. I knew you would come. Mike pulled him into a tight hug. I promised. The powerful man shouted, This is a mistake. You can't arrest me. An officer stepped forward. We have evidence, confessions, witnesses, and a 35-year-old crime that ends tonight. The man's strength left him. He sank into a chair. Mike looked at him once. No anger, no fear. Only truth. By morning, Lagos was buzzing. News broke everywhere. A powerful businessman arrested. A child trafficking case reopened. Two twins separated for 30 years reunited by fate and truth. Mike stood before cameras, Mark beside him. This is not about revenge, Mike said clearly. This is about truth. About parents whose voices were silenced. About a brother who suffered while I lived in comfort. Mark swallowed hard, then spoke. I slept under trees, Mark said. I fixed cars with bare hands. But I never stopped believing that my life had meaning. Today, I know why." The crowd went silent. Mike placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. "My brother will never suffer again." At the hospital, the doctors completed the last tests. The report was clear. Identical twins. One blood, one family. Mike held the paper like it was a living thing. Mark smiled through tears. "It's real," Mike nodded. "It always was." They returned to the village together. No convoy noise, no rush, just two brothers walking side by side. The mango tree still stood by the road. They stopped before two simple graves, Johnson, Agnes. Mark fell to his knees first. "I'm here, Mama," he whispered. "I didn't forget." Mike knelt beside him, his voice shook. "Dad, Mum, I am back. I was taken away when I was small. I returned a billionaire, but I returned your son first." Tears fell freely. "I promise," Mike continued, "your names will never die, and I will make sure my brother never suffers again." The wind moved the mango leaves gently, like a soft answer. Back in Lagos, Mike kept his word. He opened the biggest automobile workshop the city had ever seen. Modern tools, clean floors, bright lights. The sign read, "Mark Johnson Auto Works." Mark stood at the entrance, wearing clean overalls, hands steady. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Mike smiled. "You built this with your hands long before money came." Slowly, the workshop grew. People came from everywhere. Mark's skill spoke louder than words. Within months, he became known as the mechanic who could fix what others could not. Within a year, he was the most respected automobile expert in Lagos. They returned to the village again, this time with hope. A new building stood where dust once ruled. A banner read, "Johnson and Agnes Foundation." Mike addressed the crowd. "This foundation will sponsor medical surgeries, scholarships, food and shelter for the vulnerable," he said, "because no child should be lost. No family should be broken." Mark stood beside him, eyes shining. Children cheered, elders cried. The past had not won. That night, Mike and Mark sat quietly on the veranda. "You know," Mark said softly, "if your car never broke down," Mike smiled, "I would still be lost." They laughed, then grew quiet. Mike looked at his brother. "We were separated, but we were never finished." Mark nodded. "We found each other." The road that once broke them had brought them home. If you like this story, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.